Guilin in southern China stands on 2 rivers and 4 lakes, where there are bridges and boat trips. The waterside walkways are illuminated at night. In the middle of Fir Lake are the sun and moon pagodas, so called because of their colours when floodlit. Driving out of the city first thing in the morning, we headed into the countryside, passing stalls selling pomelos, a large citrus fruit which is in season in September. Oh dear, it looks like a coming together. What a fuss for a little scrape. Eventually we came to the end of the road, where a large boulder said we were entering the Longshen rice terraces, where everything travels on foot or motorbike. The area is known as the Dragon's Backbone because the summit of the mountain range looks like the backbone of a dragon and the terraces resemble its scales. The fields are built following the contours of the mountain from 600 to 800 metres above sea level. They were built by hand about 650 years ago. Paths lead to 3 villages, one of which housed the restaurant where we were going to eat. The terraces aren't just for growing rice, but many other crops as well, including bamboo shoots. Although each village can be reached on a reasonably level path, access between them is by very steep steps. We entered the village by its main traffic artery. The houses are built of wood on stone foundations. They have tiled roofs and are packed closely together. One of the houses doubles as a museum.
This house is more than 160 years old, and there are still 6 old houses like this in this area.
This implement pounds rice to separate the seed from the husk. After lunch in this restaurant, we returned to the car, stopping to buy a souvenir. Heading back towards Guilin, our next stop was at the Reed Flute Cave. It's a natural limestone cave with thousands of stalactites and stalagmites illuminated by multicoloured lighting. If you use a lot of imagination, you can make the formations look like anything you want. The cave is over 180 million years old and takes its name from a type of reed growing in the lake opposite the entrance, which can be made into flutes. As we left, the guide insisted I needed to go to the toilet. This is what I found: a loo with a view. That evening we went to see the cormorant fishing display. These birds have been hand-reared by the local fishermen. We sailed out into the Lijiang River where the fishermen were waiting for us. The birds catch fish in the river, but because they have a thread lightly tied round their necks, they can only swallow the smaller ones. They return to their owner's raft with the larger fish making a visible bulge in their crop. The fisherman then persuades the cormorant to drop the fish into the basket. This one had managed to catch 2. It's thought that cormorants can count the number of fish they've caught, and if they don't get rewarded after so many, they stop fishing. At the end of the performance, we sailed back to the jetty, and the fishermen carried on working. One of the main highlights of a visit to Guilin is a 5-hour cruise down the Li River. Every day, dozens of these boats with air-conditioned lounges and outside viewing decks set off in convoy on the 52-mile journey from Guilin to Yangshuo. Along its route, the river passes through the magnificent karst hills. This area of soft and soluble limestone has been carved and shaped over millennia by the action of wind and water. Local traders try to sell fresh fruit to passengers on the ships. As well as the tourist boats, there's lots of other traffic on the river. Stalactites grow on the side of some of the rocks. Kaoping is one of the many villages along the riverbank. These guys are fishing for snails beneath a rock that's supposed to look like an imperial crown. You could imagine this as being a thumb, and the village of Yangdi supposedly stands beneath a goat's head. The river acts as the main delivery highway to the villages. This rock formation is known as the Compassion Buddha. This view is pictured on the 20 yuan banknote. After passing through Qingping town, the next formation is Five Fingers Hill. Further along is Snail Hill. Here the river is lined with very tall bamboo. The hill looks even more like a snail from this angle. It takes continuous dredging to keep the waterway open during the dry season. The waterfall marks the end of the most scenic part of the river, which then enters the town of Yangshuo. Here, cormorant fishermen were waiting to pose for photographs with passengers disembarking at the end of the cruise. For money, of course. In Yangshuo, we had a choice of two activities. We could either go for a cycle ride or a morning tour on this motorcycle rickshaw, so that's what we chose. The first stop was at a house built in 1702, which has stayed in the same family ever since. Water comes from a pump in the courtyard, and close to it is a mill used to crush soya beans to make soya milk, which is eventually used to produce tofu. It's a lot harder than it looks. I just couldn't get the rhythm going.
Good job.
Much of the furniture is the same age as the house. The owner keeps a coffin in the house and was so proud of it that she posed in front of it. We passed a lotus field. The roots are delicious. And then we came to a little stream by a rice paddy. It was surrounded by karst mountains and looked much easier to farm than the terraces. We recrossed the bridge and continued to the Yulong River, a tributary of the Li River. A very popular activity on the Yulong River is rafting. These bamboo rafts float gently downstream, over the weir and into the calm waters below. There's only one problem. How do they get back? Well, it's quite simple really. There are a couple of conveyor belts between piers of the bridge, and the boatmen just pump the raft to the bottom of the belt, and up they go. Dash clever fellows, these Chinese. Back in the rice paddies, we went into a little village. Here we found a gorgeous little courtyard hotel which had just opened, so we stopped here for a nice cold mango juice. In the courtyard they had a few pet birds like these lovebirds, a myna bird and a couple of Australian lorikeets. It's a shame we couldn't have stayed here.